when I bought my first CD, which was Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits, which was a pretty amazing sounding record. And I think at the time not realizing that I was into the production, but just really enjoying how that record sounded, because it wasn't until much later on, when I was already a working musician, that I sort of fell into engineering and production. I'm Francesco Cameli, and we're sitting here in Sphere Studios in sunny Burbank, California. I started out as the guy at the back of the room that was really interested in what the engineer was doing, and then slowly, session by session, I migrated closer to the console and ended up being the guy perching over the engineer's shoulder, kind of, what are you doing? You know, oh, that's cool, how did you do that? I was in my early 20s by that point and wanted to work in a studio, but of course I had no studio background whatsoever, and based on what most studios were doing in the UK at the time, even at 22, 23, I was too old to become an assistant in one of the big studios in London, and so nobody would give me a job. I just got this idea that, well, I really want to build a studio, but I really want it to be like this, and none of these studios will give me a job, so I might as well just do it myself. And so we built Sphere Studios 1 in London, and ran it rather successfully for 14 years until I decided to sell it and move here. When I started using Pro Tools was maybe 2001, and essentially I've been using it ever since and slowly watched it edge out. First the digital machine and then the analog tape machine, until it's become kind of very much integral or central part to our music production today. It's beautiful to just have these essentially two screens, and unless you start pulling up MIDI pages and the rest of it, you just have your edit page, and you can do 99% of what you would need to do without ever leaving that page, which to me is key. I've actually cut my console in half and built myself a custom center section and put my Pro Tools rig right in the middle of my analog console, so I still use every bit of my analog console, but at least now I have my workstation where I want it. I really enjoy using it to do all the things that you can't really do easily with outboard gear, is I guess what I'm getting at. It's great for weird and wacky effects that you can't easily get without chaining, 10 different weird effects processors together. In the case of me in this room, I'll use, say, an artist mix in the middle of my console so that I can quickly balance up stuff in Pro Tools, which I then bring up, a bunch of faders. So typically I'll start with most of my faders in a straight line on my analog console, and I'll do really quick balances in Pro Tools with a control surface. I spend a lot of time editing drums. With a lot of producers that I work with, they will want everything absolutely gridded to within an inch of its life, and then sample augmented and all the rest of it, and I can edit an entire drum take without ever taking my hands off the keyboards. I've tried to have that depth of knowledge on other DAWs as I have in Pro Tools, and it just doesn't seem to be so easily forthcoming. It's just very organic in Pro Tools to do that, and so you can move audio around and move audio within regions and never actually really have to create a gap between audio, which would then need you to go and stretch the audio back to make sure that the audio regions are overlapping so that you can crossfade them. Just all of this just becomes this simple, just in the case of drums, for example, it becomes this simple editing operation that can just be carried out really fast, which makes your clients happy.